Hi everybody, it's Jay Nunn, the San Antonio Metal Music Examiner here at Backstage Live. A very special night where Fozzie and Theory of a Dead Man have arrived here in town to hit the stage. And I'm here with a gentleman that obviously needs no introduction.
Gentleman? Wow.
Needs no introduction, but many of you out there may not know he's a hell of a lot more than just the singer of Fozzie, just more than a WWE superstar. Mr. Chris Jericho, how are you?
Awesome, man.
Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Thanks for having me.
Fozzie just got off stage with another rocking show, and I was one of the ones yelling out there and pumping my fist. It was a fantastic show.
Very cool.
So,
there was a lot of people doing that. It was a good show.
Yes.
It was a Fozzie crowd tonight.
I know you guys had a headlining gig last night in Abilene, but technically tonight's the second night of the Theory of a Dead Man tour.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly.
How does it feel being back in San Antonio?
It's great. We actually played here last year with Saxon, and it was funny because we showed up, and they built a haunted house inside the venue, so they moved us outside. But they didn't tell us that until we basically got here. So there was a big kind of a brouhaha. We're trying to figure out the staging, the sound, the PA, and is it going to rain? And ended up being a great show. It was the biggest show of the tour. And able to keep that momentum going tonight with, like we said, a very partisan Fozzie crowd for us, which is always good as a support act to get the reaction that we got, which is pretty customary, but we have to work very hard for it tonight. People were there ready to rock. So it's cool.
Now, Do You Want to Start a War is the new album that came out from Fozzie July 22nd. Another solid record. Before I get into asking you about some songs about that, I want to talk about something that you and I discussed over the phone last year, but many people out there may not know. And that is that you have always said that the impetus for even starting Fozzie as a band occurred when you met guitarist Rich Ward backstage at the Alamo Dome in 1999. Long before Fozzie became a band, that's how everything got rolling.
That's a great point. Good, yeah.
So, but last year's Saxon show was the first time that you guys played here. So for you non-math majors, it was 14 years since they met.
One of them.
And now we've got you back twice in a span of 12 months. Can you just kind of talk about meeting Rich at that time and how things got rolling?
It's funny because I was working in WCW at the time. It was actually in '98, and Stuck Mojo was playing San Antonio. We had a show in San Antonio, and Mojo was doing something for, I think, Diamond Dallas Page or something, so they came by to hang out. And I had seen Stuck Mojo once before in Orlando, where I was living. He did say hi to the guys, but I remember liking them, and they were very wrestling friendly. They were doing a lot of wrestling catchphrases and stuff. And I remember thinking I should go backstage, but I'm just a nobody. They're probably not going to know who I am, and I don't know how to get backstage. Like, if I only knew now what I knew now, right? And then I ran into Rich. He was there with the bass player Corey, and just met each other. Didn't really talk or put together the band. We just met each other here, and then saw each other again a few months later at another show, and that's when we started talking more about maybe doing something together as a band. The first actual meeting, hi, how you doing, was here in San Antonio. It's like McCartney and Lennon at the church picnic.
Hard to believe, thinking of Chris Jericho as a nobody, but we'll take your word for it.
Yeah,
Once upon a time.
I wasn't really doing much at the time, so yeah, it was in Orlando. It was Stuck Mojo and Testament.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was told to get there early because this band Stuck Mojo was really good. I hadn't heard of them before.
Yeah.
So I went to the record store, remember those, and bought, I think it was a Snappy Neck CD, just so I could listen to, so I would know something about the band. Because I went by myself because I didn't really have any friends around there. I just moved there. So yeah, so it's been a kind of a long developing history with you guys.
Yeah. And as we mentioned, Do You Want to Start a War? The new album's got some killer songs on there.
It's got all killer songs.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, the indication of a great album is when you can listen to it every day and pick almost every day a different favorite song.
Right. Yeah.
You've got Bad Tattoo, Died With You, Tonight, Lights Go Out, I believe, is your first top 30 single.
Yeah, first top 30 single we've ever had.
Yeah, and One Crazed Anarchist. I mean, you got some great stuff on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those cool records that the biggest problem is what song do you release next as a single, because you could pick probably 6 or 7. It's kind of like a modern day Hysteria. 7 singles from the record back in the middle days. But our only rule we made this record is that there are no rules. We weren't worried about what's happening on radio, what do other bands sound like. Let's just be us, write 12 great songs, and not worry if it's too heavy, if it's too poppy, if it's too dancey, whatever. We'll just make a record the way that Queen used to make a record, where it was was about just writing the best songs you could and not worrying about what genre they really fit in. And that's what makes the record so diverse. That's what make it such a big hit so far. And the fact that people are really digging it because of the diversity and because it's, I'm not going to say it's more accessible, but it's definitely more poppy than the other records we've had in a good way. It's very catchy stuff. Like I said, it's not worried about blast beats and thrash guitars. It's about melodies, the hooks, and then putting the groove behind it.
And for me, you know, Chasing the Grail came out in 2010. That was a very solid record, heavy record in my opinion. You came up with another solid one in Sin and Bones a couple of years ago, and then of course this record. So having explained that approach to this new record, did you not take that previously with the other records? Either
well,
on
we
purpose?
did, but I mean, it takes a while for a band to really discover their identity. And you know, we started doing the cover thing, and then we had our first original record, All That Remains, that came out in '05. And then there was kind of a hiatus, about a 5-year break. And then when Rich and I got back together and said, you know, we want to do this and take this all the way, make this our priority. That's when Grail came, and then Bones, and then, you know, War. And you can see the progression. Grail was still, you know, I'm not going to say it wasn't cohesive, but we're still experimenting. Let's do a 14-minute song. You know, let's do a blast beat type of a song. And Sin still had that as well, even though it had more of the Sandpaper and you know, Addiction and Spider and those type of songs. It still had Storm the Beaches, which was a 14-minute song. It still had Blood Happens, which was kind of a blast beat. Past Life, which was kind of a trippy Doors, Iron Maiden type thing. This is one where we just went, listen, we're going to not worry about the genres, but everything will have the Fozzie sound, the Rich Ward sound, like this very heavy groove, a lot of harmonies, a lot of melodies, and just kind of building upon that. And that's where we really took that, no matter what song it is, all the songs you mentioned, whether it's Tonight, whether it's Died With You, whether it's Brides of Fire, whether it's Do You Want to Start a War, it's all got that heavy groove and you can bob your head to it. And that's the Fozzie sound. That's what we're going to continue to do from now on.
And you talk about the diversity of the record. Of course, a lot of people know you're fans of bands that, you know, most metalheads are fans of, such as Metallica, Priest, Sabbath, those kind of bands. But I also know that you're a fan of bands such as Stryper and Halloween. So for me, if somebody would have said, oh, Fozzie's going to do another cover song on their next record, I know you like to be unpredictable, so I probably would have said, oh, maybe it's a Halloween song or something that nobody would expect. You went completely opposite of all that, and Fozzie covers SOS by ABBA, which is fantastic. And I will say that, you know, not to be corny or anything, but the Dancing Queens out there, it's a headbanging version for you. It's a really cool, solid version. Whose idea was it? How did it all come about?
Well, we have a big, I mean, you mentioned all the bands that we were fans of, but we also are really big fans of 70s music. You know, I was laughing when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, if you've seen it or not, but it's all based around the 70s soundtrack, and that's music we listen to on a daily basis when we're on tour. You know, we love disco, we love the 70s kind of yacht rock, you know, that sort of stuff. And it's on all of our iPods, whether it be, you know, ABBA or Michael Jackson or Kool and the Gang or Pablo Cruz, like all these type of bands. And we did just done a show with Anthrax in Leipzig, Germany, I remember. And we were listening to the iPod on shuffle, and that song came on. And I remember Rich and I looking at each other going, this would be a great song to cover. Because it's ABBA, to take that into question, it's a dark song, it's depressing, the lyrics are very sad. It's got very minor chords, which are heavy, and then it's got this really killer, almost an Yngwie Malmsteen lick. And we're like, imagine if you took the keyboard and doubled it with the guitar and tripled it with the bass, how cool that'd be. It's like a Dream Theater type thing or something. And we decided to do it, and then the other one we were going to do was Devil Woman by Cliff Richard. But then we did SOS. It's like, this is such a good song, it was going to be a B-side. And then we thought, fuck it, man, let's not bother with the B-side, let's put it on the record. And people that hear the record, that's one of the songs they talk about the most. Seriously, I got more comments about SOS because everybody knows that song, but no one can believe it at first. It's like, that's not, is it? Wow, it is. And like you said, then it rocks.
Yeah.
So it's almost kind of the same mindset as when, you know, Manson did Sweet Dreams or Limp Bizkit did Faith. You know, Faith. Yeah. You know, it's got that type of a kind of an interesting twist to it that you wouldn't expect, and that's why it works. That's why it's a great tune. I think it, you know, works great live, and I think it might actually even end up being a single at some point. The way the reaction, the way it's tested. Awesome. So.
Well, of course, Chris is also an author. You've got a book coming out, I believe, October 14th?
October 14th, The best in the world at what? I have no idea.
Is it pretty much a continuation
Yeah,
of the
it's
last
a trilogy.
Okay.
This is my third book. So if you've read the first one and then the second one, you know exactly what you're going to get with the third one, which is just, I mean, when I was a kid, I had this dream of being in a rock band and being a wrestler. That's what I wanted to do. And I've lived my whole life doing both of those things. And as a result, there's a lot of ridiculous, fun, stupid, sad, happy, mad, glad, all those adjectives, stories. And when the second book did good and I got a contract for the third book, I was like, what the fuck am I going to write about? And then once I started writing, actually I had to start cutting stuff because I had too many stories. So I have probably, I'd say 30 great stories for a fourth book if that ever takes place. But it's a long process to write a book. It takes about 9 months to a year, and that's pen on paper, you know, figuratively, finger on keyboard. A lot of writing, rewriting, revamping. So like I said, I think people will enjoy it. I don't write books for wrestling fans or music fans. I write them just for people who like a good story. And that's why both those books have done very, very well, and I expect this one to be the same.
Yeah. And you've also done, I guess, what would be the accurate word, webisodes to describe the But I'm Chris Jericho series.
Web series,
yeah. Web series, yeah, acting. How did that all come about?
It was great. I mean, it's a story. It's an idea that I had. I left the WWE in 2005, and a lot of the stuff that happens in But I'm Chris Jericho really happened to me. You know, you go into Hollywood to try and make it as an actor or to get your foot in the door, and nobody cares that you have notoriety from another vocation. You know, so you'd go into an audition with 10 other guys that look exactly like me for one line in CSI Sheboygan. You know, boy, these pretzels are making me thirsty. Next, and you're like, but I'm Chris Jericho. Do I get another chance? Or do I get some, do I get special treatment? You did. So I took those experiences and wrote this kind of concept of what Jericho would do if he got kicked out of wrestling and tried to make it in acting. I pitched it for years. My partner and I, about a year and a half, we sold it. Did really, really well. It's got over 1 million views and won 2 Canadian Comedy Awards. So some big time stuff. Got to the Cannes Film Festival. So it's pretty, it's a lot of fun. It's very funny and led to a lot of other different opportunities, which is great.
And I've always wondered with you, and I've always wanted to ask you, with everything you've got going on, I mean, how do you find the time and time management to do everything that you do?
Well, I mean, you just gotta pick and choose, and there's a lot of things I turn down. I don't do wrestling and music at the same time. It's got to be one or the other. When you write a book, it's perfect when you're on tour because you just sit around a lot, do nothing. So instead of just sitting around doing nothing, you can go bang out and work on your book for a couple hours. So same with the podcasts. Podcasts are great just to kill time, grab your friend and go talk for an hour. So, but basically, music and wrestling, you can't do it at the same time. So you gotta kind of do one or the other. And like I said, Fozzie's been a priority for the last 4 or 5 years, and when you see me back in wrestling, it's because Fozzie's off the road or we're between albums.
And I was going to ask you about the podcast next because I've always thought, in my opinion, the 2 greatest WWE guys.
Keep talking, I'm leaving.
The two greatest WWE guys on the microphone, in my opinion, are The Rock and Chris. I mean, you guys just know how to capture and captivate a crowd.
See, sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
With your energy.
You have to have a vodka
Yeah.
on the show.
But,
I'll offer you one. I don't know if you want.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. I'll take one.
Sure, take one. All right.
Sure, thank you. But
I should have offered you before. I'm not gonna get up twice.
That's quite all right. But you guys have always been great on the mic, and you are tailor-made for something such as the podcast. And unfortunately, the only ones I've had a chance to listen to so far, check out on iTunes Chris's podcast called Talk is Jericho. Fabulous stuff. The only ones I've had a chance so far are the Rob Halford one, and then as of last night, I did listen to the entire Triple H one.
Oh, cool.
And I wanted to ask you about the Triple H one because I've spent all these years. Thank you. I've spent all these years assuming that when you put him in the lion tamer on the announce table, I always thought that is what tore his quad and put him out of action. But in listening to your podcast, I believe he did that earlier in the match.
Oh yeah, no, he did it. I actually had Austin in the walls. He hit me from behind. That's when he went down and his leg was torn, his quad was torn. And we continued on a couple more minutes.
Good stuff.
So it's smooth as a big spot. So when the thing happened on the table, as you heard on the podcast, we actually discussed it. Should we still do this? And he's like, yeah, still do it. So yeah, it's a famous moment, man. So it was good doing it. I mean, I love doing the podcast, like I say, because it gives you a chance to sit down and actually talk with your friends. So many times, whether you're working with wrestling or music or whatever, you cross paths and you go, how you doing, buddy? How's it going? Okay, well, I'll see you later. And you never really do. You mentioned the the Halford one, I mean, I've known Rob for years, but never really got a chance to talk to him. We didn't meet face to face, but it was on the phone.
Right.
45 minutes with fucking Rob Halford. I mean, come on. 45 minutes with Ace Frehley. I've never met Ace. What a great way to talk to him. Or we played a festival, Carolina Rebellion, and I went on Vinny's bus and did, an hour with Vinny Paul. Then went over to the Zombies Trail, did an hour with Zombies. It's like, you don't get a chance to talk to your guys at home. Ever. But this gives me an official reason to do that. The same thing with wrestling. Triple H, for example, I've known for 15 years, we never talked for 90 minutes. Wow. Just there at the time. So it's fun to do all that and kind of get it organized and kind of get to know your friends again and get to know people that you don't know.
And diversity is the big thing with you, because as you mentioned, you talk to rock stars, but you also talk to wrestlers, you talk to athletes, you talk to actors on there, and it's just a great thing to talk about.
Basically, Bigfoot hunter, UFO experts, like whatever interests me, hockey players, actors, the diversity. This week I got the Hardy Boys, and next week I got Kevin Smith. And that's my podcast. A lot of wrestling fans want nothing but wrestling, and that's the last thing I would ever do. And people should know that by now. I don't ever stick to one thing. We want more wrestling, or I used to get that quite a bit. I had like fucking William Shatner on, and like we'd rather see Cheeseburger from Ring of Honor. It's like, you guys need to get a life. This is William Shatner now. You gotta trust me. If I'm having him on the show, listen to it. And it's kind of gone that way. I just had my 75th episode this week, and people are now, you see the ratings, and the wrestling ones do the highest ratings, but the other ones are building some of the ratings up as well. My Vinnie Paul, my Dave Mustaine were right in the mix with some of the higher level wrestling ones. So it just helps me to train people that have no other interest, that there's other things that you can listen to and other people that are interesting, whether you know who they are or not.
Who is if you had to pick one WWE superstar that you would say is the biggest Fozzie fan, who would it be?
Well, Sheamus is one. Dolph Ziggler and Justin Roberts came to the show last night. Austin has come to a couple of our shows before. The Rock just tweeted about Lights Go Out, how it's one of his gym songs. So, I think there's quite a few guys that appreciate the band and dig the band. We've been doing it long enough, so I think sometimes, as is society, when a guy from this world wants to go into this world or is in this world, you have to work twice as hard to get the respect, and once you get it, you got it for life. And it's cool to see people, whether I know them or not, go like, fuck, I didn't realize Fozzie was this good. It's like, of course we're this good. If we weren't this good, we wouldn't be doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I go out and listen every night with Theory's playing, great band, but our crowd kills theirs. Our stage show is very energetic, it's very demanding of crowd participation. If we don't get it, I will make sure to get it somehow. And that's rock and roll, man. We're here to have fun. I want people to jump up and down. I want people to chant, hey, 1, 2, 3, chant Fozzie, and just have a good time. Not that people have a good time when they're watching, but I want reactions. And because when I went to see Van Halen or Kiss or Metallica, I give reactions to the guys that are in front of the bands. So.
And of course, a lot of you out there, especially you ladies, probably know Chris from Dancing with the Stars. Was that just a whole different vibe for you as far as the audience you were being exposed to and the experience of that whole thing? Or was it kind of like riding a bike because you've been in front of people?
No, I mean, as far as being in front of people, fine, but what I was doing in front of people, I'd never done before in my life. I'd never danced before, and they had asked me 2 other occasions to do it, and I said no, and finally Stacey Keebler called me and said, you got to do this. Stacey and I were pretty close for a while, and she was like, I keep telling you. And so I said, if I don't do it now, they'll never ask me again. Trust her judgment, so I'll give it a try. And I think, it's show business. They have a certain mindset of who they want to be where. And I think I was kind of designated to be one of the opening match guys. But dancing is, you got to be light on your feet, you got to remember choreography. It's all wrestling, and you got to understand the beat, the syncopation, the rhythms. That's all singing. So it was a combination of what I've been doing for the last 20 years, 30 years, and it ended up doing okay at it. And the fan base, completely different world. I mean, 5 million people watch you a week on Raw, for example. 25 million people watching Dancing with the Stars, and Hollywood doesn't really care about wrestling for a reason. You Dancing with the Stars for a couple weeks. You're on the Tonight Show. You're on Ellen. You're on Entertainment Tonight. All those things. So it was a real great experience for exposure for me. Increasing the fan base, and also just learning a whole new art form, which was really, really hard, but well worth it.
And it's hard to believe, before we let you go, 48 hours from now, a little less, then you're going to be at Night of Champions, WWE pay-per-view, I believe in Nashville.
Yes.
Wrestling Randy Orton. Anything you want to tell the wrestling fans out there as far as what you've got going on with either that match or things coming up that you might want to share?
No, I mean, I treated this run, we had the summer off from Fozzie, kind of a surprise summer off, which we didn't want, but we got it anyway, so that's why it was time for me to go back to the WWE. But everyone knew from the start. I came back July 1st, and I was leaving September 21st. And there's no, no mystery, and there's no like, oh, this is my last match for now. And when Fozzie has another break, then I'll come back if it works out, And if not, I had a great time this run. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, Sunday's the last match, and Monday we're in Atlanta for the next gig with Theory of the Dead Man. So it's a little bit of a busy time right now because it went from wrestling into Fozzie, one wrestling Fozzie book tour. But sometimes it happens. It's a pretty busy 4.5, 5 week stint. But that's what it's like when you're Chris Jericho,
The man is so diverse. I mean, you accomplish more in 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, literally, than a lot of people do in a lifetime, it seems. And I've always found that admirable about you. So we're going to let you go.
Try.
Yeah, congratulations on the record. It was a kick-ass show tonight. Like we said, tonight was only the second night of the tour, which means Fozzie has a lot more cities to hit. Go check them out. If they're coming to a town near you, go check out their website to find out all the tour dates. Go pick up the new album, Do You Want to Start a War?
FozzieRock.com.
Fozzie, it was a great show.
FozzieRock.com.
Chris, thank you so much for taking the time.
Cheers,
I appreciate it.
You owe me $10 for the vodka.
I think I might have that in my pocket. All right, we're going to let Chris go, so thank you so much, Chris Jericho. So for Chris, Jay Nanda, San Antonio Metal Music Examiner, saying don't hang them out to dry. Hold them up high.
Nice.